There's a strange kind of power that exists in silence. Not the awkward silence of a forgotten word or an unanswered question, but the deliberate, sharpened silence of a mind that has transcended the need to respond. Imagine a crowded room. Opinions ricochet off the walls, accusations, defenses, overconfident rebuttals, each person racing to dominate with words. In the midst of this, one figure stands still, calm, observing, not reacting. This person isn't weak, they're powerful, and Nietzsche would say they're dangerous, the most misunderstood power. We live in a world that overvalues noise. Whoever speaks the loudest, argues the longest, and reacts the fastest is assumed to be winning. But Nietzsche saw through this illusion. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he introduced a figure called the Übermensch, the overman, not a tyrant, not a brute, but someone who has mastered themselves so completely that the chaos of the world no longer dictates their behavior. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who cannot command himself should obey." And silence in this context is not avoidance, it is command. To remain silent when provoked requires more strength than to shout back. To observe without needing to correct, defend, or retaliate demands a kind of power that can only come from deep internal control. Why we speak too soon? Why do we rush to argue, defend, correct? Because silence makes us uncomfortable. We speak to prove we are not weak, but in doing so, we reveal our deepest insecurity, the fear of appearing powerless. Nietzsche would argue the truly powerful individual does not need the approval of the crowd, nor the validation of being right. Power lies in knowing you could speak, but choose not to. Silence, then, becomes a test of will, the psychological weapon. In the battlefield of human interaction, silence is the sniper. It works from the shadows. It unnerves the opponent. It forces others to confront themselves. When you do not respond, the other person is left echoing in the space you leave behind. Their arguments begin to feel empty. Their confidence begins to waver. They start doubting their own position. Nietzsche believed this discomfort is where transformation begins. He wrote, "All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking." But perhaps he meant something deeper. That clarity and power arise not when we shout over the world, but when we walk away from its noise. Historical echoes of the silent. Let's look at history's silent strategists. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, ruled Rome during plague and war. He rarely reacted with rage. His meditations are filled with thoughts reminding himself to stay calm, to observe without attachment. He wrote for himself, not for others. That's power. Nelson Mandela, after decades in prison, emerged with dignity, not vengeance. He said nothing of revenge. His silence was a moral thunderclap. Bruce Lee once said, "The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus." And focus by nature is silent. And even in fiction, Sherlock Holmes didn't argue. He listened, and his silence terrified. Nietzsche's silent trick, self-mastery before victory. In Nietzsche's mind, the world was not divided into good and evil, but between the strong and the weak. Not in body, but in spirit. The strong are those who have overcome themselves. They are no longer slaves to emotions, instincts, or the approval of others. He believed freedom is the will to be responsible to ourselves. And in that freedom lies the greatest power, the ability to choose your silence. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And when you observe long enough, you begin to see what others miss. You see motivations, insecurities, manipulations, all hidden in plain sight beneath the noise. The modern battlefield, social media, relationships, and everyday ego. Today, the war is constant. You're attacked in comment sections, challenged at dinner tables, baited into arguments with family, friends, strangers. The temptation to respond is overwhelming. But ask yourself, who benefits when I react? The moment you speak defensively, you surrender authority. The moment you explain yourself to those who don't deserve it, you admit you need their understanding. The moment you raise your voice, you reveal your imbalance. Nietzsche would say, don't defend, transcend. The power ritual, training yourself in silence. In conversations, when others interrupt or provoke, pause. Let them finish. Watch how silence forces them to justify themselves more than they plan to. In conflict, say less. Watch more. Power comes from the ability to remain centered while others lose their ground. In daily life, embrace solitude. Take silent walks, journal, disconnect. In those moments, your mind sharpens. In decision-making, don't respond instantly. Let things settle. What feels urgent today often becomes irrelevant tomorrow. Silence is the space in which your highest self can speak. Conclusion. Nietzsche's warning. Nietzsche never said power was easy. In fact, he believed most would never attain it. Why? Because silence demands that you confront yourself. It forces you to ask, why do I care about their opinion? What am I trying to prove? Who am I when no one is watching? If you can answer those questions truthfully and still remain calm, then you've unlocked Nietzsche's secret. The silent trick that gives you power is not a trick at all. It's a discipline. It's a lifestyle. And it may be the most terrifying strength of all. Because those who've mastered silence cannot be controlled. They simply are.